Planet Reddit. Today's story is...
I discovered why my wife wanted to leave me when the video of her with her boss was leaked. She lost everything. I've been going through a really tough time this last month and I need to share my situation. My wife Jenny and I are going through a crisis that seems to have no solution. It all started a couple of months ago, just after celebrating our second wedding anniversary. We've been together for 5 years in total, 2 of them married, and I thought it was the ideal time to start a family. When I proposed the idea of having children, she replied that she still didn't feel ready, the same answer she had given me the year before. This was especially frustrating because she always knew how important it was for me to be a father. We had even talked about it before formalizing our relationship. Although I tried not to pressure her, I couldn't help showing my discontent and we had a small argument. At the time I didn't think it was a big deal, but it clearly was for her because after that day, despite my attempts to patch things up, our relationship changed completely. She became more distant, started spending more time at work and less at home, and no matter how hard I tried, nothing I did seemed to matter or catch her attention. A month ago, I decided to have a serious conversation with her because the situation had become untenable. That's when she told me she felt too much pressure from me. She explained that she couldn't handle the situation and that she wanted to open our marriage. She told me that the previous week she had been offered a promotion that would require even more time at the office, but she hadn't mentioned it to me because she was afraid of my reaction. She told me that she could no longer handle this kind of pressure, that she needed to focus on her career and that's why she was suggesting an open marriage. She didn't want me to feel limited because of her, as that would make her feel guilty and she couldn't deal with that right now. I was completely surprised. I never imagined that something like this could happen and I tried to change her mind. All I managed to get her to agree to was taking a few months apart to reevaluate our relationship and see what we wanted from each other. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was the only thing I could get. Since then, she has been living on her own. I tried to get in touch with her several times over the last few weeks, but she didn't reply and just told me she needed time to think about what she wanted. However, everything took an unexpected turn when a couple of days ago she came to see me on her own initiative and, surprisingly, she seemed very sorry for everything that had happened. It seemed strange to me because until recently she had continued to ignore me. Suddenly, she appeared at her house with all her belongings saying that she had come back to stay. She assured me that she had learned her lesson, admitted to having made a big mistake and told me that she had decided to quit her job to become a housewife. She even mentioned that she was now ready to be a mother. I found it very disconcerting and was sure that something important must have happened to bring about such a drastic change, especially knowing how important her career was to her. I decided to investigate what was going on. After talking to some of her coworkers through social networks, I was able to find out exactly what had happened. My wife had been involved in one of the biggest scandals in her company. Someone had leaked videos from the security cameras in her boss's office showing the two of them in an intimate situation after working hours, and practically all of her coworkers had seen the images. Following typical corporate behavior, her boss denied having a long-term relationship with her even though they had been together for a year and, thanks to his connections, he managed to get away with it. He had a relative on the board of directors, so they simply transferred him to another branch without much of a fuss. To cover up the whole affair, Jenny was offered the chance to resign after signing a confidentiality agreement, with compensation to help her over the next few months. However, she refused to accept the initial offer because she wanted to negotiate a better severance package, which got her into trouble. The company responded by threatening to sue her, and she knew they had a very aggressive legal team that could destroy her. She would probably lose all her savings trying to fight this battle, not to mention the damage to her reputation that a public trial would cause. In the end, she decided to accept the settlement and leave, but by then the company had significantly reduced the amount of the compensation, resulting in a considerable loss of money. All this had happened in the last 3.5 weeks, which made me realize that it was probably the real reason for her return. I felt deeply hurt. Yesterday, after confirming all these details with several of her co-workers, I decided to confront her. Until that moment, although I had my suspicions, I had allowed her to stay at home. But when I brought it up, I noticed that she became very frightened and told me that I was misinterpreting the situation. That was all I needed to know. The simple fact that all this had happened was enough to tell her that I didn't want her back and that she needed to leave immediately. She tried to explain that I had got the wrong end of the stick, that her boss had manipulated her and lied to her. But the fact that all this had happened, that she hadn't told me anything about it, and that in the end it was still an infidelity regardless of the circumstances, was something I couldn't forgive. She cried a lot and resisted, but I insisted that she leave until she finally left. I was devastated. I cried myself to sleep that night, and this morning I received a call from my in-laws telling me that this was the last thing their daughter needed after everything she had been through. They support her version of events, that her boss had cheated on her and given her false hope, and that this was why she had acted as she had. I tried to explain to them that this did not change the fact that it had been an act of infidelity and that she had participated voluntarily. But they called me insensitive for firing her and refusing to support her at this time. Now I wonder if I made the right decision, because the situation seems more complicated than I initially thought, and I feel very confused about it. To clear up some doubts that have arisen, here are some important points. First, she admitted that everything was consensual. She confessed to me that it started because her boss flirted with her and she responded to his advances. This confirms that everything was consensual from start to finish, without a doubt. If it had been a different situation, I would definitely have supported her. Secondly, I'm not even sure if she told me the truth about the promotion or if it was just an excuse to get away from me and be able to live independently without my constant presence bothering her. She confessed that her boss had promised to leave his wife soon to marry her. Not only that, but he also assured her that he would promote her above other employees in her department and give her a significant raise in a short time. These were the promises he fell for, and I cannot understand why he would go to such lengths for a promotion and a raise. I can understand career ambition, but this was completely inappropriate and terrible. Anyway, this is all the information I have, and I hope it clears up any questions people may have about the situation. Update 1. I want to thank everyone for their support. The comments have been tremendously helpful in helping me understand the situation better, especially because I have felt very disoriented and confused during all this time. Although I have doubted practically every decision I have made so far, after reading your comments and talking to my parents, I have come to the conclusion that I did exactly what I should have done. At the end of the day, nothing changes the fact that she could have chosen not to be unfaithful to me, but she did. She made a conscious decision to cheat on me, to destroy our marriage, and to lie to me about absolutely everything. It is not something I can easily get over, nor is it something I want to get over. I have already contacted a lawyer, we are starting divorce proceedings, and, beyond that, I simply do not want to have any kind of relationship with her. However, it seems that neither she nor her parents are prepared to accept this reality. Although several days have passed since I asked her to leave, they have not stopped trying to contact me. When I blocked her original phone numbers and social media accounts, they started using temporary numbers and alternative profiles. They have even sent other relatives to try to convince me that I am causing us both irreparable damage by choosing divorce. They constantly mention the time we've spent together, insisting that our marriage deserves a second chance and that we can sort things out by talking, attending couples therapy, or taking any other step other than getting divorced. I don't understand why they expect me to take the initiative to fix the situation, especially when it was Jenny who committed the infidelity. I was completely willing to continue with our marriage, work on our relationship, and start a family with her. That is precisely what I had wanted for so long, until I discovered her betrayal. I consider my current reaction to be perfectly reasonable. I am not the one destroying anything, much less our years together. She was the one who ruined it in the first place. I'm not going to be the one to pick up the pieces and try to put it back together again. That is beneath my dignity, and I don't understand why I'm expected to do something like that. In any case, her actions no longer matter at this point. At most, they will be a minor inconvenience for me because I have already decided what I want to do: get divorced, move on with my life, and leave all this behind. I know it won't be easy, I'm aware of that, but I'm going to do it because I really don't want anything to do with this situation. She has deeply disappointed me, she has repulsed me, and I can't even reconcile the person she is now with the one I fell in love with. Update 2. Jenny came to see me today. It's been 6 days since my last update. I haven't had a chance to post here because I've been trying to keep busy. I've already completed the process of filing for divorce. She should receive the notification in a couple of days, and although I was expecting her to visit after that, I was surprised to see her arrive today. I've been working from home these last few days because I need to get my life in order. Honestly, I don't feel able to go to the office right now. When she showed up in the afternoon, I considered pretending I wasn't home and letting her leave on her own. But I finally decided to let her in because I wanted to talk to her, not to reconcile, but simply to understand why she did this to me. I know many would not agree with this decision, but I felt I needed to have this last conversation with her. I let her in, and as soon as she crossed the door, she started crying and apologizing. But I immediately warned her that crying and pleading would not change my mind, and would only make me feel more uncomfortable talking to her. I had to ask her to leave once again. I spoke to her firmly, but made it clear that we could have a calm conversation like adults, or she could leave. After hearing this, she decided to calm down and we sat down in the living room. She began to explain to me, as calmly as she could, that she regretted all the harm she had caused me and that it had never been her intention to hurt me. I found it tremendously ironic, and I replied that if she really hadn't wanted to hurt me, she wouldn't have done any of this in the first place, although there was no point in discussing it now. I thought she was going to challenge my comment, but she remained silent for a few moments before continuing. She told me that she could understand that I was very upset with her, and that I had every right to be, but that I just needed a chance to explain everything because I had already lost everything. She didn't want to lose me too while I still thought she was a bad person. I already sensed what she was going to say, but I decided to give her the opportunity to speak. She began by explaining that her boss had always shown an interest in her since she started working there. According to her, he had always flirted with her, but she had constantly ignored him. However, recently he had begun to hint that if she reciprocated his advances, she would get job benefits, which tempted her. He assured me that he had done it with us in mind. He explained that he thought that if I agreed it would make life easier for both of us, and he even mentioned that he was planning for the future because he knew that I wanted to start a family. But at the same time, he felt guilty about his actions because he knew it wasn't the right thing to do. She had chosen the easy way out and felt bad about it, about what I couldn't face, and so she had decided to temporarily distance herself until she found the courage to end the whole situation. Apparently, she had been trying to end it for some time, but then someone leaked the video and everything got complicated for her. When she finished talking, I felt confused because I was already aware of all this, so I told her that I had been hoping for a more substantial explanation, but that I already knew all that information. She then replied that that was precisely what she wanted to tell me, and that she thought this would make me forgive her, that the fact that she was thinking about us and our future while being unfaithful to me would somehow make me feel better about it. It was so absurd that I couldn't help but laugh. I told her that for the last few days I had been feeling terrible about everything that had happened, but that now I could see clearly that it had been for the best. If I had never found out, I would probably have regretted it even more when I eventually did find out. I told her that I was glad the truth had come out, no matter how it happened, because she is definitely not the kind of person I want to start a family with now. I also told her that since she had come, she could take the opportunity to collect all her belongings once and for all and leave, because I didn't want to see her again, at least until the divorce proceedings began. She tried to protest, but I told her that I simply didn't want to continue the conversation. I had given her the opportunity to explain herself because I was looking for closure, and that had been my mistake, believing that she had something valid to say in her defense after all. She started crying again and telling me that she really believed that this would make me forgive her. She insisted that she had been manipulated into deceiving me. Honestly, I could only roll my eyes because it was unbelievable how even now I couldn't understand that no one can be manipulated into doing something like that. At the end of the day, it was a personal decision. Once again, I had to warn her that if she started behaving irrationally, I would throw her out again. After a brief argument, she started shouting at me and accused me of being heartless. She told me that after everything that had happened, she couldn't believe that even now I didn't feel compassion for her. I replied that I had no intention of feeling sorry for her just because she was facing the consequences of her own actions. It was unfortunate that someone had leaked the video and that she had gotten herself into all this trouble, but not her boss. However, even that had been a personal decision. And right now, I don't have the energy to feel sorry for someone who has turned my world completely upside down. She insulted me repeatedly, cried a lot and tried to win my sympathy in various ways, but nothing worked. Finally, I told her that now she had the opportunity to collect her things because if she came back later, I wouldn't let her in. From her behavior today, I could tell that she wouldn't be an easy person to deal with. I didn't want to go through another similar episode, so I warned her that this was her last chance to take everything she had left. After a while, when she was still trying to argue with me and I wasn't responding, she finally started going through the other rooms to collect her belongings. Within an hour, she had packed a large suitcase and was ready to leave. Even before she left, she looked at me and warned me that I was making a big mistake and that I would regret this in the future. I replied that I already had enough regrets related to her and that I didn't care about one more. I just needed her to leave me alone because I wasn't going to forgive her and she didn't deserve my forgiveness either. After that, after wasting almost 3 hours, she finally left and, honestly, I'm glad I decided to give her this chance because now I have no doubts about my situation. I'm doing the right thing, I've got closure and I don't even think I'll miss her anymore. This isn't even the person I fell in love with, so why should I feel bad about ending it? Anyway, I lost a whole day's work today, so that's probably the only regret I'll have. Update 3. It's been a couple of days since Jenny last came and we spoke. Since then, I've concentrated exclusively on work and avoided any distractions. I figured that the divorce-related matters would follow their natural course, and there was no point in worrying about it. Yesterday I think she received the divorce papers, and today she decided to show up again. This time I didn't let her in, and pretended I wasn't home. It may seem a bit extreme, but I took refuge in the bathroom and continued working in silence while she kept ringing the doorbell outside. After about 15 minutes, she apparently assumed that no one was home and left. I waited almost half an hour before returning to the living room, and when I was sure she was completely gone, I decided to open the door to check if she had left anything behind. That's when I found a sticky note on my door, asking me to unlock it and talk to her. I tore it off, crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. I had no intention of unlocking it or talking to her. However, I should have anticipated that she wouldn't give up so easily, because about an hour later, she came back. This time, unfortunately, I couldn't pretend I wasn't there because I was in the middle of the work call in the living room and she could hear me. I tried to ignore the doorbell, but she persisted, shouting that she knew I was home and that I couldn't avoid the situation by pretending I wasn't. After a while I had had enough and told her I didn't want to talk to her. I warned her that if she continued with that behavior I would call the police, because she was becoming irrational and difficult to deal with. Even so, she didn't leave. She replied that she didn't care who I called, but that she needed to talk to me, and that after all the time we'd been together, this was the least I could do for her. I considered it for a moment, but then I remembered that I had already given her a chance last time and she had wasted it. It was clear that she had nothing constructive to say, so why should I waste my time again? I decided to call the police instead of talking to her, and apparently she was listening carefully to what was going on inside because she heard the phone call. I had intentionally spoken louder thinking that hearing me call the police would make her leave, but instead it only made her act more irrationally. She started shouting at me from outside the door, calling me a horrible person and other insults, but I didn't feel intimidated at all. She continued like this until the police arrived, and then she was removed from my property rather brusquely because she refused to leave voluntarily. She could have left with dignity, but she chose to leave struggling and shouting. After this, I made a mental note that if she tried to show up again, I would probably have to apply for a restraining order against her, because this situation was getting on my nerves, and given her mental state, it was impossible to predict her actions. I never found out what she had come to tell me and why she was so desperate to keep turning up, but I don't think it was worth my time anyway, so I have no regrets about my decision. At this point, I just hope that all the divorce proceedings are resolved quickly so that I can stop dealing with her erratic behavior. Update 4. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and today I finally heard back from Jenny and her lawyer. During this time there had been total silence from her, which was strange to me because after I called the police, I was pretty sure she would take some action and I would have to file for a restraining order. I had even discussed the possibility with my lawyer and we were prepared, but fortunately nothing happened. However, after 2 weeks without hearing from her, I was starting to feel worried. Today, finally, her parents came to my house, accompanied by her lawyer. They came to give me the signed divorce papers in person and wanted to talk to me on Jenny's behalf. At first, I wasn't very willing to open the door, especially after everything that had happened with Jenny, so I asked them to leave the documents outside and to go away, as I really didn't want to interact with them. But they replied that this was a very disrespectful attitude on my part, and said that they could understand my misgivings, given that after everything that had happened with Jenny, I didn't want to take any chances again. But that they were more emotionally stable than their daughter at the moment. They also reminded me that I should show respect, considering that they are significantly older than me. Although I was skeptical, they sounded reasonable enough, so I thought I would just deal with them, listen to what they had to say and let them go. I opened the door, they handed me the documents, and proceeded to express their deep disappointment. They explained that Jenny had fallen into a state of absolute misery and erratic behavior after her last visit, and that was why she had acted so irrationally when she came last time. They wanted to apologize for that, but they also pointed out that, ultimately, it was my fault, because if I had forgiven her and given her a second chance, things would have been different for their daughter. They told me that her mental stability is currently extremely fragile, and they consider me responsible for it. They told me that Jenny had said that, after everything she had had to face, she had always hoped that I would support her, but that even I had turned out to be like everyone else. That's why she wanted me to know that she would never come forward again and that she would definitely leave me alone as I wished, because it was clear that I had never really loved her. That was the message that her parents came to convey to me, and I suppose they expected some kind of emotional reaction from me, but I felt absolutely nothing. In fact, I only experienced relief at learning that she had decided not to show up again and leave me in peace, as well as having accepted all the terms of the request without complications. They stood there for a few more seconds after finishing their speech, probably waiting for some reaction, but when they got none, they simply turned and walked away muttering to each other. I don't care what they were saying, because I'm just relieved that this is finally coming to an end. I'm done. And that's all I wanted, so I'm grateful.